Hi everyone, I'm Katie and welcome to EmPower Yoga. This is a multi-level class where we're going to be tuning in with our own bodies, and each week we're going to be focusing on a different chakra. This week we are focusing on the root chakra, which is right centered above the pelvic floor. So we're going to be doing a little bit of pelvic floor awareness and then building into our practice with an intention on grounding and foundational postures. The chakras you can define as the energy centers within the body. If you look at the Eastern philosophies that they come from, these ideas originated before we really understood much about the human anatomy. But the interesting thing is that these energy centers that were identified in the bodies, all, now that we know Western medicine, all have a lot of kind of nerve centers, and there's a lot of the links between our emotions to our physical body are centered in these places. So that's just kind of quick in a nutshell what a chakra actually is. So let's come to our comfortable supine lying down position. And whatever that looks like for you, maybe with the legs open or maybe with the knees bent and the soles of the feet resting on the floor. And just taking a minute to check in with our breath, with our body. Maybe you'd like to rest a hand on the chest and the belly. And just taking a moment to become aware of our breath without judgment. Observing the rise and fall of the chest or the belly. Observing whether you're breathing through the nose or the mouth. And as we lie here, letting go of anything from the day that is stewing in our mind, letting the sound of the breath take our attention as everything else falls away. And as we're lying here, in connection with our breath, noticing those points of the body that are supported. The points underneath the feet that connect down to the mat. The heels if you have them outstretched, or the soles of the feet if your knees are bent. Feeling the pelvis, the sits bones, or the back of the head. Bringing your awareness into any point of you that is connected to the ground underneath you. And acknowledging that support. Feeling that stability. Feeling that solid surface underneath you. Knowing that you can rely upon it. And if you'd like, letting the hands rest alongside the body and turning the palms up toward the sky if we feel that we want a little bit of openness, or if you really want to feel that grounding sensation, we can turn the palms down and feel the sensation of the mat or the floor under our hands. And as we continue to breathe, let's breathe into the belly, feeling it rise, and then feeling the chest rise. And then letting both together sink down toward the mat. Inhaling, belly rises, and then the chest rises, and then both release together. Finding your 3-part breath at your own pace. And then as we move in this breath, becoming aware of our pelvic floor, which is actually breathing together with the diaphragm underneath the lungs. The pelvic floor is a network of muscles that connect between the sits bones and the front and back of the pelvis. And as we inhale, those muscles release and stretch. As we exhale, those muscles squeeze in and pull in toward our abdomen. So without trying too hard to control that motion, just see if we can start to bring our awareness to it. Maybe starting to gently rock the pelvis at the same time. Just a little bit, inhaling and feeling a little space at the low back. Exhaling and feeling that space get smaller or disappear entirely. Inhaling, little pelvic rock. Exhaling, pressing the back down on the floor. Continuing that subtle motion at your own pace. And the pelvic floor and the diaphragm move together like jellyfish swimming through the water. That pulsing, stretching, and then contracting. Just becoming aware of that very small motion at the pelvic floor. And then maybe making it a little bit more intentional. More intentionally releasing it on the inhale and then squeezing it in on the exhale. And both women and men have a pelvic floor. So regardless of your gender, these are muscles that you have, that you can learn to control. And then bringing the palms down to the mat. On our inhale, let's lift the hips up, finding a bridge pose. And exhaling, rolling down. And flowing through our bridge with our breath at our own pace. And observing the sensations of the pelvic floor, which are now reversing that natural synchronization with the diaphragm. And noticing what we feel in our hips, in our shoulders. And again, calling our awareness to those points where we're supported underneath the feet, the shoulder blades, the back of the head. Feeling our breath get larger and larger as we roll through these bridges. And following your breath as a guide. Remembering that we always want to keep that stability in whichever variation of a pose we flow into. Maybe you want to stay right here, or maybe in that little tiny pelvic tilt. Or maybe you even want a little bit more challenge. Challenging your stability as we rise into that bridge. And then option floating one foot up toward the sky. Placing it down, floating the other foot up. Focusing on your stability, your groundedness, as we lift one foot at a time up. One more on each side. And then setting down, rolling down to the mat. Bringing our knees into the chest for a hug. And taking one hand to the right knee and one hand to the left. And let's keep that left leg steady as we move that right leg through a little circle. If you'd like, closing the eyes as we start to feel the sensations in the hip. Maybe noticing the pelvic floor. asking how it is involved in this flow or not. Do we feel any sensation on that side of the body? And bringing that knee back to center, holding that right leg steady and moving the left leg in a circle. And bringing that knee back into center. Setting the soles of the feet back on the mat and taking the arms out like the letter T. And bringing our feet out maybe mat width apart or a little bit wider. And then gently letting the legs drop to one side. Inhaling to center. Exhaling to the other side. It doesn't have to be a big twist. Just a little windshield wiper of the legs back and forth. Just as far as feels good to you. If you'd like, we can also let the head rotate the opposite direction of the knees. And again, as you're in the flow, noticing those points of connection and support underneath your body. And if you like, reminding yourself of an affirmation: I am stable, I am supported, I honor my right to exist, to be present. If you'd like to let the legs stay on one side for a little bit of a deeper twist. And bringing them to center, over to the other side. And then coming back to center, bringing the knees in for a hug. And this time rolling the knees together on a big circle, massaging the sacrum against the mat. And the opposite direction. Noticing that point of groundedness underneath the sacrum and the low back, across the glutes, with that gentle massage. And then when you're ready, rolling onto one side. Finding your fetal posture. Feeling our gratitude for that support underneath us. For the breath that keeps moving inside us. And then when you're ready, using your hands and arm strength to push up to seated. Finding your way to a seated position. Maybe you would like to be seated cross-legged. Maybe you'd like to sit on something like a block or a blanket to get a little bit of extra elevation and let the legs open a little bit more easily. Whichever position that you're in, maybe with legs in front or folded underneath you, taking some time to move the flesh out so we can really feel that supported stability of the sits bones connected with that support underneath us. And taking a moment just to reconnect with the breath in this vertical position. Again, to see if we can bring our awareness into the pelvic floor. On our inhale, feeling those muscles in between the sits bones release and relax. Exhaling, feeling them engage and pull in. one way that you can picture the motion of the pelvic floor, right where that root chakra is if we take our hands and we make a little cup with them so that they're up toward the sky and just kind of stack them over each other. And this is the shape that our diaphragm and our pelvic floor are making. So that idea of the jellyfish moving through the water is that the two hands are moving together like this. And that's the same thing that our pelvic floor and our diaphragm are naturally, unconsciously doing when we breathe. So when we inhale, they're pressing down. And when we exhale, they're coming back up. And you can kind of feel that stretch across your fingertips and across your palms when you move your hand into that shape. And that's the same thing that's happening in the pelvic floor when we breathe in. It's expanding and stretching out, and then it contracts when we exhale. So just see if you can get that motion to synchronize. And just bringing our awareness into what we're feeling in those muscles. And it might seem a little counterintuitive because it's kind of the opposite of what you think is happening. Even now, I started thinking about it, and so I did it backwards. Inhale, exhale. So if you can remove that visual aid of the hands and see if you can get that motion to just bring your awareness into it on your inhale. On your exhale, that contraction. Inhale, expansion. And then inhaling and lifting the crown of the head tall to the sky. Let's create some space between the vertebrae so we can start to move into a twist. On our inhale, let's circle sweep the hands up. Exhale, twisting and bringing the hands down. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, opposite side. Moving through the twist with your breath at your own pace. Giving time for the lungs to expand to their fullest. And finding our awareness in that stability that we're creating through the pelvic floor in this twist. Feeling it engage in as we exhale. And let's go once more to each side. And then meeting in our twist, maybe we'll let our arms wind around our body. Maybe we'll turn the gaze over the shoulder. Customizing your practice as you listen to the messages that your body is giving you. Remembering that first and foremost, we want to be grounded in our posture. So as long as you feel grounded and you want to explore more, whichever pose you're in, go ahead and explore that. And inhaling, coming back up to center. Exhaling, twisting to the opposite side. Feeling that grounding under the sits bones, maybe feeling the pelvic floor lift up and in. And when you're ready, unwinding to center. And taking our hands to heart center for a moment. Reconnecting with our intention for our practice today. Letting go of expectation and judgment and competition. Maybe setting yourself an affirmation. I am supported. I am strong. I'm letting go of fear and embracing compassion and love for myself. finding an affirmation that resonates with you today and letting that guide your practice. And releasing our hands and coming onto a tabletop on all fours, moving a block aside if we've been seated on that. And finding our nice, stable, supported tabletop posture. We're aligning our wrists underneath our shoulders and our knees underneath our hips so that we're making nice vertical lines with our limbs, just like the legs of a table. And again, bringing our attention to the pelvic floor, feeling it. Inhale and expand. Exhale, coming in. Just keeping our attention on moving the pelvic floor for right now. For a few breaths. And then a little at a time, maybe the pelvis also starts to tilt. As we exhale, the tailbone tucks under. As we inhale, the sits bones lift up toward the sky. Just keeping the isolated motion to our pelvis right now. As we have that conversation with our spine. And ask it how far it wants to move today. Maybe it's just this lumbar spine that wants to move. Maybe we feel we want to stretch out the back muscles, scooping in the belly and letting the shoulder blades slide apart. And reversing, shining the heart center forward. Exhaling to our cat. Inhaling to our cow. Flowing with your breath as you let your cat and cow flow come to whatever depth feels best to you. Maybe it's that really subtle motion, or maybe you really feel inclined to stretch out. Maybe you feel you want to send a wave up the spine, starting with the tailbone and then rolling one vertebrae at a time up the spine. Maybe you start to feel yourself wanting to sink back to a child's pose and then back to your tabletop. Maybe you want to let your abdomen engage and really find a plank, coming far enough forward that we have to work a little bit to keep our hips off of the mat. Exhaling back to your plank. Maybe you want to find a high plank, bringing the knees off of the mat and floating back to your downward facing dog. Mindful that if you have acid reflux today, we want to keep our inversions as minimal as possible. So you probably just want to do the plank to child's pose version. Customizing our flow based on the messages that we're getting from our body and our mind today. And as we're in this flow, again, calling our attention to our points of stability underneath the hands or the knees or just the toes. And giving yourself permission to take your practice to wherever it needs to be. Even if that's just sinking the hips back toward the heels in child's pose. And when you're ready, finding that stability under the hands, coming up, walking the hands toward, or the feet toward the hands, finding a forward fold. Now again, if we have acid reflux, let's come halfway down rather than into our full fold. And whichever you're in, maybe starting to straighten the legs. Maybe starting to straighten the spine. Maybe starting to straighten the pelvis. Maybe starting to straighten the pelvis. Maybe floating the toes off of the mat, feeling some stretch through the hamstrings. Let's all meet in that halfway down monkey pose. And taking our hands to our upper thighs and pressing the hips toward the back of the room, feeling some release in the low back. Feeling the crown of the head lift toward the front of the room for a long neutral spine. And bending knees, sitting the hips back, inhaling all the way up. Our first mountain pose of the day. Bringing our hands through heart center and to our sides. And in our mountain pose, let's look at creating that stability in the body, maybe rocking from heel to toes, and picking up the toes, feeling the arch lift away from the floor, and then one at a time pressing the toes down. Bending the knees, stretching the ankles, and rolling the shoulders down away from the ears. Inhaling, circle sweeping up. Exhaling, swan diving, bending the knees, hinging at the hips, forward fold. Inhaling to monkey. Sitting the hips back, inhaling back up to mountain. All right, we're going to spend a little bit of a time with our chair pose. So if you have a block or something that's about block size, we want to find something that we can place between our thighs to keep our feet at about hip width apart. So whatever object you might have, maybe it's a soup can or a water bottle if you don't have a yoga block, just find something that you can squeeze in between your knees, in between your thighs, where we can bring that awareness into the pelvic floor. So let's just find that stable foundation again like we did in our mountain and rocking back and forth from heel to toes. And finding a little bit of a squeeze on that block and starting to feel the glutes engage, starting to feel that pelvic floor lift. Finding our nice low belly breath. And then taking our hands to heart center. And reaching the hips back, keeping our weight in our heels. Our toes can even wiggle up away from the mat if they want to. And then inhaling, coming back up to our mountain pose, nice and vertical. Exhaling, sinking back, squeezing into the block. Inhaling, coming back up. And flowing with your breath at your own pace. As we bring our awareness into the pelvic floor and into those points of support underneath the feet. Making sure that our spine is staying long so it's not rounding down. We're keeping that lift through the crown of the head. Two more breaths. Now an option for those who want a little bit more challenge is if we come to that chair and then if we rock onto the balls of our feet so that the heels can float away from the mat, we find a balancing chair. Observing that we are still stable and supported by the floor under our toes and also by that sensation of the block between our legs. And setting the heels down, inhaling back up, finding our mountain pose. And now let's take the block away and move through that same chair flow, only this time recreating that sensation of stability that that block gave us. So we're keeping our feet hip width apart, and now we have a space where the block was. If we exhale, taking hands to heart center, see if you can find those same muscles that were engaging before. And then inhale back up. Exhale, lower down. Creating that internal stability rather than having to rely on the external block. Two more breaths. And then if you feel you want that challenge without the block in place, in that balancing chair, shifting the weight into the toes, floating the heels up, seeing if we can keep our spine in that exact same position where it was before without rounding down. Now if you have to choose between one or the other, between rounding or between keeping the neutral spine and being on the toes, choose neutral spine and set the toes down rather than having to hunch down in order to get into that balance. Inhaling, meeting back in mountain pose. Whew. All right, let's find a quadricep stretch for a moment and kind of counteract that work that we did in those hip flexors. So if you'd like to come to a wall, you can, or if you'd like to just work on your balance while you're standing, that works too. So we're going to see if we can take hold of our foot with our hand. So if we bend one leg and then see if we can take hold of the ankle. Now if we're just doing a quadricep stretch, it's okay if we take the outside of the ankle and just starting to kick that foot back till we feel some stretch through the hip flexors. If you want to try taking the support away from the wall, finding your balance, we're almost in a dancer pose. Now if you would like to explore that dancer, let's see if we can, instead of taking the outside of the ankle, reach the inside of the ankle. So taking the hand inside, and that way we're getting some external rotation of the shoulder. And then again, kicking the foot into the hand. Starting to feel a little bit of a deeper stretch both through the hip and the shoulder at the same time. Maybe you want to let that hand away from the wall, reach forward into your dancer. Finding gratitude for that stability of the floor, for the breath, for the support that both give us. And when you're ready, coming back to mountain. Beautiful job. And let's switch to the other side. So we'll stretch out the quadricep first, just taking the hand to the outside of the ankle and starting to press that foot toward the hand. Maybe you want to work on your balance, taking the hand away from your support. And maybe you want to explore a little bit more challenge and try the dancer on this side. So again, taking the leg back and seeing if we can reach the inside of the ankle for our dancer. Finding that external rotation of the shoulder, we can let that shoulder come back and down. And then starting to kick the foot into the hand. Feeling your stretch of your dancer pose. Option to release the wall, bring the hand forward. When you're ready, coming back to your mountain. Nice job. Whew. All right, we're going to make our way down to the mat for some more seated stretches. Inhaling up. Exhaling, swan diving, forward fold. And then stepping down to hands and knees. And coming down onto our seat. And we'll bring one leg out to the side. And then tuck the other leg in. So we'll find a side body opening stretch. And we have a few different ways that we can reach this. If you prefer to use a strap, you can do that. For the strappy option, all we need to do is make a little loop in our strap and place it around our foot. And I just realized I didn't ask you to get a strap at the beginning of practice today, but if you want one, you can go grab it. It's not essential. So I'm actually not going to use it today, but if you wanted to, just make sure that you're not pulling yourself too hard, that you're just using it to guide your motion rather than actively pulling with it. So we'll come up, finding our neutral spine, crown of the head lifting toward the sky, and then taking the opposite arm of our outstretched leg and lifting it up. And then letting the hand start to walk down the leg as we feel the side body start to open up. Now this can give us a little bit of tension through the shoulder and the neck, so if that doesn't feel good for you to have the arm overhead, another option, taking our hand down to the small of the back. So again, just listening to the messages that you're getting from your body as we're more focused on our grounding and our stability. So if you feel like you're unstable in that top position, go ahead and take the hand down. And take a moment to just sink in with the breath. And remembering our sinking style breath, where we inhale and lift the crown of the head to elongate the spine, and then hinge a little bit deeper. Inhaling, unfolding. Coming back to that seated position, shaking the legs out a little bit, and then stretching that opposite foot out. Finding our neutral spine, floating the opposite arm up, and exhaling, starting to bend to the side. Letting the hand just walk down the leg, or if you have the strap, making sure that you're not pulling too much, just creating that little bit of tension. An option, taking that top hand, bringing it down to the low back. Tuning in with what your body is telling you on this side. Focusing on being supported. Feeling the side body open up. Feeling air get into those far corners of the lungs. Feeling the intercostal muscles stretch. And inhaling, unfolding, coming back up. Taking our feet together in a butterfly. And in our butterfly, rather than trying to get our heels as close as we possibly can to our hips, let's make sure that they're just in a diamond kind of shape. Maybe rocking from side to side. And inhaling, lifting the crown of the head up. Exhaling, leading with the chest as we start to hinge forward. Keeping our spine nice and long, so rather than letting our shoulders round, Really just focusing on feeling the stretch through the hips. If you have pretty flexible hips, you might even want to start opening up your feet like the pages of a book so that the knees come a little closer to the floor. And coming back to neutral, shaking the legs out. And then we'll come back down to the mat, and we're going to finish with a relaxation pose called legs up the wall, or alternately legs on a chair. So I'm going to use my little stool over here to demonstrate the legs on a chair option. And then I also have the wall behind me, so I can demonstrate legs up the wall. But these are really nice restorative kind of stretches, especially as we've done so much for the pelvic floor and the lower abdomen today. So for our legs on the chair pose, just sidle your hips right up next to it and bring the low legs onto the chair, and then go ahead and lie back. And this can be a really nice, just releasing pose, getting that little bit of elevation in the legs. And if you feel inclined to just bring in one leg and then the other, one at a time. Again, feeling fully supported, as that's our root chakra focus for the day. And if you're in legs up the wall, if you have a wall space you want to try, one fun thing that you can do is place a blanket or a pillow underneath your hips before you start angling them up the wall. So you have to kind of shimmy, sidle yourself up next to the wall, get your hips as close as you can, and then lay yourself down and let your legs float up the wall. So these are both really gentle, restorative options, both legs on a chair and legs up the wall. And just like we practiced bringing our legs in when we were on the chair, we can do something similar on the wall. We can have our legs bent or have them straight. Find a little bit of stretch, one leg at a time. And one fun option with legs up the wall that we don't have with legs on a chair is a straddle, where we can let the legs really open up, letting gravity start to pull the feet down. And bringing our awareness into all those places where we're supported. Along the line of the back, the hips and the pillow, the heels against the wall. And if you feel inclined, just follow your intuition about any final stretches that you need. We'll flow from here into our Shavasana. If you want, you can stay in this supported legs up the wall or legs on a chair position for Shavasana today. Giving your body and your mind a chance to just enjoy this gentle, supported inversion. To let the pelvic floor relax, as we've put a lot of focus on it today. And as our root chakra is focused around our right to simply exist, our right to be, remembering that simply being is still doing yoga. So even when the pose is doing the work for you, you don't have to be physically active in order to still receive the benefits of your yoga practice. Sometimes all you need to do is simply exist and bring your awareness to the fact that you are existing, that you are being. Just letting the breath happen. Feeling a softness come into the face as the eyes fall heavy in the sockets. And if you'd like to find a little bit of relaxation through the neck, we can take our hands to the back of our head, just above the neck, and lift the head up and pull it slightly away from the body and then set it down again. Just creating that little bit of traction for our neck. Maybe feeling the chin gently tuck in toward the chest. Feeling the shoulders relaxing down away from the ears. Feeling the heaviness of the exhale pull the chest and the belly down. Feeling gravity pulling the feet. Enjoying the sensation of support so that we can simply melt down. Letting the breath be the only thing that has our attention for just a minute or two. And when you're ready, starting to bring some small motions back into the body. Maybe just wiggling the fingers or the toes. And rolling the head side to side. And bringing the legs back together, the knees in toward the chest. Rolling side to side. And rolling onto one side in a fetal posture. Using arm strength, pushing back up to seated. And taking one more minute of stillness and quiet. Enjoying that connection to our support, to our breath. And meeting with hands at heart center. And calling to mind your affirmation for the day, whatever it is. I am supported. I am stable. I am letting go of fear and embracing compassion and love. And carrying that intention with you off of the mat. Thank you for inviting me to be your yoga guide tonight. And remembering the word namaste means the light in me sees the light in you. My spirit acknowledges your spirit. Namaste.